I am out this morning at Robertsville State Park, just west of St. Louis. It's one of my family's favorite places to hike. There are two awesome trails that are here, a longer loop and then like a 1 mile short loop. The 1 mile short loop in the fall has like a pawpaw grove on it. It's incredibly beautiful. The leaves are huge and they turn like this translucent orange. But that's not why I'm here this morning. I'm here because I wanted to take you to the Roberts Cemetery. It's about a third of a mile hike back in from the road, and there are a lot of mosquitoes out today, so I might not linger long here, but you can see this old cemetery. Isn't that cool? They got it all gated off, and I'm going to respect that, but you can see this big one is the one that caught my attention. James E. Roberts, born 1852, died 1886. And I wanted to bring you out here this morning in this spot because it reminds me of this passage from Matthew chapter 23. In Matthew 23, Jesus is going on. There are things, everybody thinks like Jesus, soft, cuddly Jesus, but there are things Jesus really despises. And in Matthew 23, he addresses that. He talks about the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. These are the religious leaders of his day. And he says this, and I love this passage. He says a bunch of things, and they're great. Go read Matthew 23. They're great. But he says this, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." It's such a great metaphor, isn't it? On the outside, everything looks great. You're beautiful, beautiful whitewashed tomb. But on the inside of this tomb is what? Nothing but decaying bones and emptiness. This kind of empty religion that Jesus despises. We're already going to get out of here. I am getting destroyed by mosquitoes. Isn't that a beautiful spot? You can see that it's a bummer that the power lines go all the way through here, but it opens it up and gives you some pretty awesome views. Jesus despises empty religion. And I think when I read that passage, at first I kind of laugh because it's good metaphor and good humor, but then also I've kind of like convicted in my own heart about the times in my wandering where I have wandered into continually partaking in religious practices where my heart, my mind, my integrity, where they aren't all lining up, where I might be going about the task or the activity, but I'm not really doing it to honor God. Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, confronts the people of Israel that way in Isaiah chapter 58. It's really such a beautiful passage. And it's a perspective shift because the people, well, listen to the beginning of this. "Shout it out loud, do not hold it back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does right." So the people are seeking them out. "They ask me for just decisions, and they seem eager to come have God come near them." That's what I feel like sometimes, right? Like I'm eager for God to come near me. I want his justice and his decisions in my life. And then he continues in verse 3. "Why have we fasted," they say, "and you haven't seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed?" So they ask this question from this place of what they think is helpful religious practice. They're like, why is it that God isn't close to me? Why isn't he hearing me? Why isn't he active and involved in my life? We're doing all of these things. We're doing them over and over and over again, but it seems like God's distant from us. And maybe that's a spiritual check. Maybe you don't think you're whitewashed tomb. Maybe you think everything's in check because you attend the right service on the right morning, you go to the right Bible study, you have the right Bible study group, maybe something like that. But on the inside, it's not living. It's not active. And you keep asking God, why is it that I seem to do all the things that you want me to do, but you never show up? And God responds this way. He says, "Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers, your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Oh man, it's so convicting, isn't it? This is what he says, you're doing all these religious practices, but in the end, the only thing that happens is you're exploiting your workers and you're fighting with one another. That's not the heart of God. And so he continues on, is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves. Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast? A day acceptable to the Lord? No. He says, don't just do the practice. He says, no, this is the kind of fasting I have chosen. To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke. To set the oppressed free and break every yoke. It's to share your food with the hungry and provide the wanderer with shelter. When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then, if you do that, if your heart is behind your religious practices, if your heart is there in them, if your religious activities, we don't just throw them away, if your religious activities are offering the kind of humble, selfless value that God desires from our heart. Listen to what he says what's happened. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, here I am. Well, right now I need God to save me from these mosquitoes. If you have wandered into empty religion, I'd encourage you to check your heart today. Make sure you're not whitewashed tomb. Turn back to God. Use your religious practices to set the oppressed free, to break the yoke, to tear down barriers, to be places and people of peace in tumultuous times.